The Department of Defense was founded in 1912, and in the first 2 years of the Defense Force before the outbreak of the First World War, it really was, bringing all of these diverse entities together. Cape Colonial, former Boer Republican forces, Natal Colonial forces, everything had to come together into this melting pot. And it was not always it was an experiment. Whether it was successful was obviously debatable, because when South Africa entered the First World War, we have the Afrikaner Rebellion, and that would almost be, apart from a small internal deployment to quell some industrial trouble, the Afrikaner Rebellion and the campaign in German Southwest Africa was really the first test of the Defence Force. It was a trial and error period, I think, for a large part of it. The Afrikaner Rebellion really tested the operational resolve of the Defence Force, having to deploy internally against your own people as well. So shortly after the South African War, that was still quite fresh in the people's memories. And then once that was sort of dealt with, the focus could then go to German Southwest Africa, Namibia today, and under the leadership of Louis Botha and Jan Smith. It was actually a relatively successful campaign, very harsh climate, topography, as we'll talk about later, in East Africa as well. But Namibia was very, very difficult to operate in. And the South Africans had an overwhelming force there against a relatively small German force, but they were relatively successful. That would then lead to a deployment to East Africa in late 1915, early 1916 under Jan Smith. Of course, very different, a much more resolute enemy under von Lettow-Vorbeck. And Smith was very successful with the South Africans, but it was a very costly campaign in terms of health and hygiene, not so much just combat, but what tested the South Africans, and they were there until the end of the war. And then, of course, what I think most people really know about the South Africans, or the collective memory of the war, is the deployment to France and Flanders, the Battle of Delville Wood, various other actions fought on the Western Front, the sinking of the Mendi. And then finally, South Africa, sort of the Cape Corps, had the big Battle of Square Hill in Palestine. And then, like all other militaries or defense forces in the world, the interwar period was one that really tested the defense force. The defense budgets were cut. There was a revulsion in war. They had to sort of go back to the drawing board, figure out the organization. There was rationalization. It was not a happy period. And I don't think if any other department in the civil service, I think everybody suffered. But the Defence Force, from this big war fighting machine at the end of the First World War, really got dwindled down to something really negligible. And the Defence Force was mainly used in internal policing. So the Rand Revolt, the Bordel-Swartz Rebellion, the Rehoboth Rebellion, the Defence Force was basically an instrument of state security or internal policing. So the interesting uptick was after 1933, when Oswald Perot came in as the Minister of Defence, and all of a sudden things started going better in the Defence Force. The budget increased, the Air Force benefited quite a bit, the Navy as well, but the Army, I'm a landlubber, but the Army was not in a good position just on the eve of the Second World War. So it was a bit of a mixed bag. I think we had some good First World War experiences, but the interwar period really, a lot of it was lost. A lot of that innovation and critical thinking about where defense should be going.